Welcome back, everybody, to another Sabaton reaction video. Well, your voice has been heard over on Patreon, and our next reaction video after this one is going to be History of the Entire World, I guess. Now, I was intending to do that video today, but it's a pretty long one, and there's a lot to cover. So I wanted to make sure I set aside plenty of time to make that video. It's going to end up probably one of the longer ones I've done. So we're going to do it tomorrow just so I have time to really invest in that and do it right. So for today, The Lost Battalion, which is what I promised you would be the next Sabaton reaction video. This is one of my favorite Sabaton songs, and this is also the first time I'll be reacting to a song that I've heard before I actually did the reaction. So I'm admitting that up front. I've heard the song. I love this song. I love the content that it's about. I remember, oh gosh, probably about the time that my wife and I got married, which was 18 years ago, there was a movie that came out about this. I think it was called The Lost Battalion. And the clips you're going to see in this version of the music video are from The Lost Battalion, which starred Rick Schroeder, who, as I think Whittlesey was the name of the major who took overall command of these forces. So the clips you're going to see are about that. And so this is something that I've actually done some studying on. It's been years. It was back when I watched the movie, but I'll probably have a lot to say about this one. There's some interesting stories that go along with the aftermath of The Lost Battalion that I want to get into as we get into this one. So let's go ahead and dive in.
I remember the Argonne, 1918. The sounds of that battle still haunt me to this day. Machine gun fire from enemy lines. The sickening sound of a bayonet tearing through human flesh. A soldier next to me firing his sidearm in desperation. All these sounds still echo in my mind, and as conducted by Death himself, it all comes together as music. A rhythm of death. A symphony of war.
So let's talk about this for a second, a little background into what was happening here. These are elements of the 77th Division, which was, I think it's called the Liberty Division. They have like the Statue of Liberty on their patch. They're mostly New Yorkers, primarily New York City, I believe, in the metropolitan area around New York City, these guys that are fighting. And so this is the Meuse-Argonne offensive, which is the last great offensive of the war, at least that the Americans are involved in. And in fact, the majority of people I've done research into who fought in World War I, the majority of the wounds that I've seen and the killed that I've seen, at least in American forces, came in that first week of October in the Meuse-Argonne offensive. So these are elements, what we call the Lost Battalion was actually, these were elements of 4 different battalions. Primarily, one particular battalion, which was under the command of Major Charles Whittlesey, who takes overall command of the forces, but they were companies from multiple commands. They call them the Lost Battalion because of what happened to them. So they advance in this attack, and the units on either flank of this particular group of soldiers actually stopped, but the unit itself kept on going, not knowing that the men on either flank had stopped. And so they end up advancing all on their own and get surrounded by the Germans. I love this song. Love this song.
The great war rages on. Our battalion is lost in the Argonne. Under fire, there's nothing they can do. There's no way they can get a message through.
Okay, so he says there's no way they can get a message through, and they show the pigeons there. They send multiple runners trying to get messages out, but every one of those runners is either killed or captured by the Germans. And eventually they're able to get a pigeon, a carrier pigeon, which were used extensively in World War I. The carrier pigeon gets through, and I believe the message was basically telling them, this is where we are, stop shooting at us. Because what was happening was the friendly artillery kept firing on this position, thinking that it was Germans. And they were begging them to stop shelling their own men, and also telling them exactly where they were.
Suffer heavy losses as the battle carries on.
Liberty Division, that's the name of the division. So through the blockade, they were finally saved. So after, I think, like 6 days or so, they finally, the American forces were able to break through to get to them. In the meantime, they were trying to drop supplies to them because they were suffering heavy losses. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but the Americans did something to show where they were, but then the Germans imitated the exact same thing that they did. So the pilots got confused and dropped all the supplies to the Germans instead of the Americans. I believe out of the, I want to say there's like 550 or so Americans. I think only about 200 of them were still standing and able to fight when this was all over. So those are the things I've already mentioned. Friendly fire, their supplies are running low, their supplies were dropped to their foes. So another thing that happened was they were trying to find water because obviously they needed water. And the only place where there was water was under heavy fire, and so they would crawl out to where the water was, but eventually one guy finally reaches it just to find that there are actually bodies of dead Americans in the water, making it undrinkable. So, as I mentioned, one of my absolute favorite Sabaton songs. Just love this one. Let's talk a little bit about the aftermath of this. So, I think like 7 or 8 of the men involved in this got the Medal of Honor, which is America's highest honor given for valor. A number of Distinguished Service Crosses, way too many to count. I don't know, there was a couple of dozen of them, and that's the second highest award. So probably for the percentage of men involved, one of the highest levels of Medals of Honor and Distinguished Service Crosses in history. It might even be the most in history. I can't confirm that, but in the aftermath of that, so I think like the top 3 highest ranking officers in this group of soldiers all received the Medal of Honor. Whittlesey was one of them. Charles Whittlesey, after the battle, kind of became a hero and made a lot of campaign type stops afterwards, giving speeches and things like that, because everybody knew who he was. Everybody knew about the Lost Battalion. He ends up, along with Sergeant Alvin York, who we've talked about in 82nd All the Way. He and Sergeant Alvin York and a few others are actually chosen as pallbearers for the unknown soldier, when the unknown soldier is brought home to be our first unknown that's buried in Arlington. And a few days after the burial of the unknown soldier, Charles Whittlesley is believed to have committed suicide. He took his own life. He was on a ship and he disappeared. And the general feeling is that he jumped overboard, but he was never found, unfortunately. So a very sad end to his story, unfortunately, but an incredible story. One of my favorite songs of Sabaton's, one of my favorite stories of World War I. If you can add to the discussion, please use the comment section below. Hit a like if you haven't already. Please subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow with the history of the world, of the entire world, I guess. Thanks for watching.